What up friends, I'm James, your host, and today I'm finally getting around to it. I'm reviewing the newest and debut album by Injury Reserve. Like I said before, this is the debut album by the experimental hip-hop trio Injury Reserve, although this comes after they've found success with their past few EPs and mixtapes that they released beforehand. Injury Reserve has always struck me as a very unique group, what with Parker's production and the very bombastic yet relatable personalities that Steppa and Richie bring to the table. This album features all of their unique quirks and musical intricacy that you can come to expect from an Injury Reserve project, although it also enhances it with a subtle yet interesting story arc of the trio's journey as musicians. The album starts off with a bang with Koruna and Lime, one of the debut singles from the record. It leads us off with a very industrial beat and tons of little vocal samples and whimsical touches that really bring up the energy and hype us up. There's tons of clever wordplay, like if you don't help out Steppa, you better only speak in mime. His flow here is very bouncy yet smooth at the same time, and when Richie's very cocky flow comes in, it brings a balance to the track that is pretty awesome to see. This whole song kinda has this very youthful energy to it, and in the grand scheme of the message of the album, I suppose this can represent the start of their careers when they were young and full of energy, and this continues with the next few tracks. The excellent calmer opening on Jawbreaker meshes perfectly with Protein's very forceful chorus. Richie's rant on consumer and social media culture is pretty hilarious, but it's also balanced with a hint of seriousness as well, kind of discussing the cultural stereotypes and pressures that black men may have to face. Rico Nasty's verse was also very well done, kind of complementing the other verses in that it talks about similar topics, but coming from a black woman's perspective as well. I liked all those different perspectives, and they just come together to enhance the theme really nicely. The fact that the instrumental picks up during the verses and calms during the chorus is a pretty cool spin on the traditional song structure, and I think it helps make the song stand out overall. Especially during the bombastic outro where the chorus is just screamed over these distorted vocals and bass. It's pretty insane. GTFU, however, is probably the only song that I'm not completely in love with here. The instrumental is pretty cool enough. It's very menacing and unnerving. It's almost horror movie-esque, so I like that angle on it a lot. JPEG Mafia's intro is also pretty good at setting the mood, although I wish he had a full feature. This is pretty much the only time he appears on the songs when he's doing these little intros and outros and things like that. I feel like it was kind of a wasted opportunity. Like the last song, the overall lyrics on this track are kind of talking about doing your own thing and maintaining your own message, but also coming from a more psychological standpoint this time, as opposed to the more physical consumerism that we discussed last time with the last track. Cakes to Kill also has a pretty great verse, and I really like using the theme of Simon Says to allude to the fact that his business isn't a game. I feel like though his verse was also a bit underutilized. I wish there was a nicer meshing of everybody's parts on this track. Though I will say when the instrumental does take a bit more of a dire turn in the outro when Steppa and Richie are kind of pleading to people to take care of themselves and make better life choices, I think that's a pretty emotional moment of the song, and it's probably one of the highlights of it as well. Now, Jailbreak the Tesla, the lead single from the track, is probably one of my favorites on the album. I mean, of course. It's also probably one of the most clever, especially in the instrumentation, what with the beat using these breaking sounds and this heavy, punishing bass line. It's pretty awesome. It's cocky as hell. There's also a lot of older and relatable references in the lyrics as well, from jailbreaking an iPod Touch with Red Snow, or pirating apps, or using LimeWire. There's a lot of neat little references and tidbits that give the lyrics a lot of personality. Amine's verse is also probably one of the best features on the album. There's incredibly smooth flows describing his Tesla to the "your engine go vroom, my engine go" line, which is just it's super witty. Using Steppa to bring a sense of heaviness to the chorus was also a pretty great touch, and it's arguably one of the noisiest moments on the album. Like, talk about taking a simple concept and just running with it. This track is amazing. Now, Gravy and Biscuits, from the instrumental to the flows. It almost sounds like a weird parody of an old Eminem song. It's pretty funny. It really adds to the wacky and whimsical personality of the album so far, just taken in a different direction. The very whimsical keys and the jazzy bass line really enhance the sort of comedic value that this song has, although there's also a bit of a sarcastic tone to this track as well, and that gets more prevalent later on as the track takes a turn for a bit more serious, I suppose. I really like the reuse of the humble as a mumble and the jungle ya dig line, and how it kinda just transitions the narrative of this album from young rappers just kind of having fun and figuring stuff out, and it brings them to this point where they're starting to make a career out of it, starting to take it a bit more seriously. Also, they have to start taking care of other people as well. Rap Song Tutorial is a pretty genius concept for a song, I must say. It's not only effective in showing how a song is made, how a rap song is made, but also what separates good rap songs from bad rap songs. It really got me the first time I was listening to it with the write a hook step, when I realized he was literally fucking writing a hook on his phone with the taps. It was pretty good. I love hearing the steps and writing the song and hearing it all come together at the end. I almost wish this was kind of like a little intermission thing, and then the actual song that they made was the next track. They kind of separate the two, but it was still a lot of fun. The instrumental is actually pretty funky in its own way, what with the screeching sound effects, and Richie's flow and lyrics are actually pretty good in their own right, too. And I feel like if we are going to talk about the narrative of the album, I feel that this is also when the narrative transitions into their serious careers. They're starting to focus on their careers as artists and take things a bit more seriously, show their process, and it's also kind of fun to apply these steps to other songs that they've made, or other songs that other people have made, just to see how in line they are with each other. Now, as I said, since we transition for the more serious, taking their career more seriously, we are going to delve into some darker lyrical concepts and instrumentals. Wax On, despite the light opening, is a pretty dark track. Richie's chorus is melancholy and serious, and when combined with the haunting keys and hollow beat, it's a pretty chilling experience. Steppa and Richie are contemplating Injury Reserve's journey to get to where they are today. The Karate Kid references really enhance the sort of self-reflection, and Freddie Gibbs' flow is pretty crazy in his verse too. It's incredibly smooth, and he actually manages to make very contemplative topics sound smooth and confident. Like, he knows that he's going through this, and he knows he's going to get through it and do it well. It's pretty nice. The strings at the end are another dark and ethereal element to the track that really ties the entire thing together. And the songs on the latter half of the album in general are definitely some of my favorites because of how they mesh these sounds together. What a Year It's Been apparently samples a track from A Silver Mount Zion, which is pretty fitting because this track is incredibly dense and overcast. Steppa's intro was incredibly heartfelt over this billowing synth reflecting on his daughter and how he succeeded and how his family would be proud of him. Richie also gives a shout out to Parker and expresses his relief in how he managed to make a career doing what he loves and how everything is starting to figure itself out. And then the drums hit. Those fucking drums hit. Probably one of the best moments on this entire album, especially on this song. The intensity that comes with the verses that supported this is just insane. And the lyrics are a hard-hitting rant on how they succeeded without a lot of money, without a lot of corporate backing and influence, and how they basically made it on their own. They also bring back the Mr. Miyagi reference on their song Washed Up, to say how they made their style their own and how others just copy it. It's a nice emphasis on their originality. The David Clark reference near the end also just enhances the punch of their message, I think. Biscuits in the House is another great track. The very glitchy beat and the distorted guitar serve as the opening to Richie's confusion, which is fame, which I think is a pretty important topic, and is one that he handles pretty well here. He also opens up about his relationship with fans, some of his past actions. It's a pretty heart-wrenching but also heartwarming moment on the track. It's interesting to hear him address his fans that love his darker and more heartfelt lyrics, saying that he feels ashamed for rapping about things like not even going to his friend's funeral. I think the respect for his fans is also pretty prevalent when he mentions how he didn't save them, they saved themselves through their own willpower. It's possible that he helped, but they're kind of downplaying their own strength by saying that he did all the work. I think that shows his respect for his fans a lot. He's in a way reinforcing what he said on the earlier tracks of this album, wanting his fans to be confident in who they are, wanting them to be unique and proud of who they are and what they've done, and to be themselves. The chorus is also a pretty cool callback to North Pole from Drive It Like It's Stolen, with Parker here delivering this very slow and melancholic and a bit empty chorus here. Steppa also relates a personal story about his old friend Chuck, who had a heart attack when he was playing basketball. Though he survived, it was then that Steppa realized how important life is and how you'd need to be close to the people you care about and take everything as it comes. And I think that's a very fitting message for this album and their journey to success. The line at the end about him seeing Chuck in the crowd during their first headlining show was also pretty powerful. New Hawaii appears as we approach the end of the album, and it's another tone change. This is them near the end of their journey, where they're happier where they are, where they're finding love and success. Tony Velour's vocals, along with the waves and the very liquid-styled beat, they really suit the title, giving off a very laid-back and relaxed vibe, especially when talking about love. Dylan Brady's intermission here is also very striking. His vocals in his signature style are so distorted where they almost sound like a weird synth. It's a pretty interesting tone shift even within the same song, but it also works pretty well. Dram is also a great complement to the other features and verses. In a way, all of their vocals sound like a progression of one another, especially as they talk about similar lyrical concepts. Richie then comes in during the last part of the track as the main melody fades, talking about his love for his partner and his daughter. The Picasso references and his show of support for his family, along with their interests, and this is coupled with some pretty incredible and beautiful strings. All of that makes this probably my favorite moment on the entire album, and I may have teared up a bit when I first heard it. That's how good it is. Now, continuing from New Hawaii, we end off the album with Three Man Weave, a bit of a lighter element after the heaviness that we had with the past few tracks to finish off the album. The more jazz rap sounds, and also sounds reminiscent of 80s and 90s hip-hop, are a pretty welcome sight. They're pretty different from the rest of the album, so they give it a bit of variety. There's also this fantastic sax that plays in the background while Steppa and Richie and Parker kind of look back on their younger selves and where they were before and kind of see where they're heading now. The groovy bass and very smooth flows from Steppa and Richie really give the song a very nostalgic vibe, and a very hopeful one as well. All three of them finally found something to believe in, and they even have room to throw in a little humor, like a jab at Russ here and there, or finding themselves too pretentious for Migos, and I think it's good that the album ends on a much lighter note. Overall, Injury Reserve just have a very consistent sense of quality, and that continues with this album. Though some of the features can be underutilized, and while fun, the intermission tracks don't really add that much to the overall narrative. I think this was a pretty solid project. It also had a very interesting and subtle underlying narrative to the whole thing as well. The songs were a great combination of experimental yet accessible, and also full of bangers, but also full of more contemplative and mellow tracks too. There's a bit of everything here. Their lyrics are relatable, their production is intricate and layered. There are very few flaws here, and this album probably has some of the most charm I've heard from a record in quite a while. Overall, I'm feeling a decent 9 on this one. I really love this one, man. I really loved it. Of course, we also have to talk about the album cover here, and I really like this album cover a lot. It's not exactly modern or in my normal style that I'm a fan of, but it's very fitting to them. The whole aesthetic actually kind of reminds me of Ye's album cover with the very striking green and the more muted background. I think it's pretty fitting. It has this indie charm that I think matches the album and Injury Reserve as a whole, so I think it's good. But those were my opinions on Injury Reserve's debut album. What did you guys think about it? Did you love it as much as I did? I hope you did, because it was amazing. And until the next one, farewell.